My wife had been gone for almost 2 years when the call came that my brother was dying. I drove 11 hours straight from Tucson to a hospice in Boise, the kind of place that smells like lavender trying to cover something else. The nurse at the front desk looked at me strangely when I gave my name. Not rude, not warm either, just the kind of look that sticks with you afterward. She told me my brother had been asking for me all morning, so I dropped my duffel by the chair and went straight to his room. Hollis looked smaller than I remembered. That was the first thing that hit me. Not weak, smaller. Cancer had taken the weight off him piece by piece, until the man who once built an entire lakeside cabin with his bare hands barely looked heavy enough to crease the sheets beneath him. But his eyes were still sharp. The second I walked in, he grabbed my wrist with surprising strength. "Where's Cale?" he whispered. "You seen the boy yet?" I told him no. The nurse said my nephew was driving in from Spokane the next morning. Something in Hollis's face tightened when I said that. Not fear exactly. More like a man hearing a clock run out. I tried convincing myself I imagined it. Hollis raised me after our father disappeared in 1968. He taught me how to shave, how to throw a punch without breaking my thumb, how to apologize when pride wanted me to stay silent. If there was one person on earth I trusted without question, it was him. For 3 days I stayed mostly in that room, listening to oxygen machines hum while November rain tapped against the windows. Across the hallway was an older woman everyone called Mrs. Peeberly. She kept mostly to herself. Thin hands, gray eyes, always working crossword puzzles in pen like she didn't believe in second guesses. The first time we spoke, I brought her a blueberry muffin from the family kitchen downstairs. She thanked me politely and went back to her puzzle. That should have been the end of it. But late on the third night, I stepped out of Hollis's room to clear my head and found her awake in the dark, sitting beside her doorway. "Your brother's worried about something," she said quietly. I stopped. She nodded toward the wall between their rooms. "He talks in his sleep." I gave a tired smile and told her morphine makes people say strange things. But she kept staring at me. "He keeps repeating the same sentence," she said. "Tell Owen not to sign anything." A cold feeling crawled up my spine. Before I could answer, she leaned forward slightly. "Your nephew arrives tomorrow, doesn't he?" I said yes. Her expression changed then. Not confused, not uncertain. "Certain." "Listen to me carefully," she whispered. "Whatever that boy asks you tomorrow, don't agree to it." I remember forcing out a small laugh because the alternative felt impossible. Cale was family. I'd taught him to bait a fishing hook when he was 7 years old. The idea that I needed to protect my dying brother from his own son sounded insane. But before I walked away, Mrs. Peeberly said one more thing that followed me back into Hollis's room like a shadow. "Sometimes," she said softly, "the people who rush you are the ones hoping you never stop to think." And for the first time since arriving in Boise, I couldn't sleep at all. Cale arrived the next morning just before noon. He walked into the hospice wearing a charcoal jacket and carrying one of those expensive leather bags businessmen carry when they want everyone to think they have their life together. The first thing he did was hug me. Too long. That was what struck me. Not emotional, measured, like he was checking whether I still trusted him. Then he stepped over to Hollis's bed and turned soft instantly. "Hey, Dad," he whispered, taking his hand. "I'm here." For a few minutes, everything looked normal. Hey, son saying goodbye to his father. A family trying to survive the worst week of their lives. But I noticed Hollis watching me the entire time. Not Cale. Me. Like he wanted to say something, and couldn't force the words through whatever pain the medication had wrapped around him. That feeling from the hallway the night before came back hard. About an hour later, Cale suggested we grab coffee downstairs to talk through arrangements. The cafeteria was nearly empty, except for a volunteer wiping tables near the vending machines. Cale sat across from me and folded his hands calmly. "Dad's worried about the cabin," he said. That cabin mattered. Hollis built it himself back in the 70s near Coeur d'Alene, when land was still cheap, and nobody thought lake property would someday be worth a fortune. It was the last real thing he owned. Cale explained that probate could tie everything up for years, unless Hollis signed a few transfer papers immediately. "He wants to keep things simple," Cale said smoothly, "especially for Bree, his sister, my niece." I asked if she knew about all this. "Of course," he answered a little too quickly. She already agreed. Then he smiled at me. "Honestly, Uncle Owen, we just need one witness signature. That's it. Simple. Clean? Convenient. Exactly the kind of situation Esther Peeberly warned me about. If you've ever had a moment where your stomach knew something before your brain caught up, subscribe. Because sometimes survival starts with listening to that feeling. I asked to see the paperwork before signing anything. And for the first time since arriving, Cale's expression slipped. Only for a second, but I saw it. A flash of irritation behind the smile. Sure, he said carefully, no problem. That afternoon, a notary arrived carrying a brown leather briefcase. The second I saw him walk into Hollis's room, every nerve in my body tightened. Cale welcomed him like this had all been planned for days. The documents were already laid out beside my brother's bed when I stepped inside. Hollis looked exhausted. His hands trembled against the blanket, and when his eyes met mine, I saw something I'll never forget as long as I live. Shame, not confusion, not weakness. Shame. The notary began explaining the paperwork in a rehearsed voice, but I interrupted and asked to read everything myself. The first document was exactly what Cale described, transfer of the cabin, but underneath it sat two more papers. One gave Cale full power of attorney over every financial account Hollis owned effective immediately. The other changed the beneficiary on a $400,000 insurance policy from Bree to Cale. Fresh typing, fresh signatures lines, fresh betrayal. The room suddenly felt smaller. Cale, I said slowly, what exactly is this? His tone changed immediately. Defensive now, protective measures, he answered, in case Dad declines faster than expected. But you said he only had days left. He didn't answer that. Instead, he tried steering the conversation away. Uncle Owen, now really isn't the time for family conflict. That sentence told me everything, because honest people explain things. Manipulative people rush things. I looked at Hollis. Tears had gathered in the corners of his eyes. He knew. God help me, he knew. I asked one question. Did Bree agree to being removed from the policy? Cale's jaw tightened. Yes. I pulled my phone from my pocket. Then she won't mind confirming it. He stood up so quickly his chair scraped the floor. Uncle, don't do this. I already was. Bree answered on the second ring. I put her on speaker and asked the question directly. The silence afterward was horrifying. What policy? She whispered. I looked at Cale. And suddenly I wasn't seeing the little boy from Idaho anymore. I was seeing a man desperately trying to hold together a collapsing lie. Cale started talking fast then, claiming misunderstandings, claiming stress, claiming he was only trying to help. But Bree's voice cut straight through him. Don't sign anything, she said urgently. I'm booking a flight right now. That was the moment the mask fully came off. Cale stopped pretending. The warmth disappeared from his face completely. He looked cold, cornered, almost angry that we'd ruined his timing. Then he said something I'll never forget. You don't understand how much money I'm drowning in. Not Dad wanted this. Not it's what's best. Money. That was the truth underneath everything. I stepped between him and my brother's bed. Get out, I said quietly. For a second I thought he might argue. Instead he gathered the papers slowly, closed his briefcase and walked out without another word. And behind me I heard my brother begin to cry. Hollis passed away 31 hours later, just before sunrise. Bree made it in time. Cale didn't come back. A week after the funeral, Bree and I sat inside my brother's lawyer's office and learned how close we'd come to losing everything. The real will split the cabin evenly between the two kids. The insurance policy belonged entirely to Bree, and part of Hollis's savings was meant to fund a scholarship at the trade school, where he'd learned carpentry as a young man. Cale's documents would have erased almost all of it. That was the moment I finally understood what Esther Peeberly had saved us from. I drove back to the hospice the following weekend, hoping to thank her properly. But the nurse at the front desk lowered her eyes the second I asked for her room number. She passed 2 days ago, she said softly. Before I left, the nurse handed me an envelope with my name written across the front in shaky handwriting. Inside was a letter. Esther explained that years earlier, her own son had stolen everything from her while she was sick. Her savings, her home, even her wedding rings. And the worst part, she wrote, wasn't losing the money. It was discovering later that other family members suspected something was wrong and stayed silent because it wasn't their place. If you've ever had someone warn you when nobody else would, subscribe, because those people change lives more than they'll ever know. 6 months later, more victims began surfacing. An elderly man Cale had borrowed money from, former clients, old family friends. The truth finally came apart piece by piece until even the courts couldn't ignore it anymore. Cale eventually went to prison for fraud. But honestly, that isn't the part I think about most. What stays with me is a dying woman sitting in a dark hospice hallway at 2 in the morning, choosing to tell a stranger the truth. And sometimes that's all it takes to save an entire family.